Greetings. This is Nyah with National Network View. On tonight's show, weekly contributor Charles Muhammad will provide tips from how to eat to live on the best food for babies and children to eat, avoiding processed foods, and the use of vitamins and supplements to help maintain a good health. Before we get into the top news, let's do a recap of the current events that we have recently covered. NNV News anchor Rosalind Parks sat down with weekly contributor Brian E. Muhammad to discuss growing concerns over the effectiveness of the African National Congress in governing South Africa, its internal power struggles, and the social unrest.
Has the ANC outlived its effectiveness and ability to govern South Africa?
I'll say this, the ANC came to power in 1994, and I just want to take this opportunity, of course, to correct a number. I said 24 years last week, but it's actually they've been in power for 27 years now. Okay. And, they're the first democratically elected government. Before that, it was white settler minority rule who ruled strictly by white supremacy. And so when they came to power, the ANC came to power, they made many promises to the people, of how life would be better, how, it would be a better South Africa under our rule. And of course, everybody believed. Nobody wanted to see the ANC fail.
Sister Mariam K. Muhammad, founder of Heal Thy Life Center, shared how her spiritual life coaching addresses the overall health conditions of women and girls through hands-on workshops, health seminars, lectures, and retreats.
Do you feel there's a lack or a void of this type of information or even this type of space for space like yours in today's society?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I feel like women are treated as if we're a new species to the planet. When it comes to our health, whether mental health, physical health, spiritual health, we're treated as if we're new. The time that it takes to learn how our bodies function is put to the sideline. If you look at the medical industry, we're not a priority. So when you go to the OB-GYN or you get a checkup and they're telling you, oh, you're okay, and you're describing your signs and symptoms and they're trying to tell you it's normal, but it's not normal. Or they're experimenting on us, or everything is always so extreme. I may be having pain in my reproductive system. Oh, she needs a hysterectomy. Like everything, the responses are always so extreme instead of taking the time to learn how our bodies work.
Poet, artist, social activist, and podcaster Ankit Rumi graced us with her art and her unique transcendental poetry of existence and social justice.
Yes. Can you give us a short overview of what you do and how you came into your purpose?
Yes, ma'am. I can give you a short overview. I love history, and I love art history in particular. And I study art history so much. And sometimes I just feel like there's something missing. Like I want to tell our stories in a way that's celebratory and not necessarily so sad. So I focus on people in our history who are traditionally celebrated, for instance, Harriet Tubman. But intricately, we don't really know Harriet. And so I tell our stories in a way that we get to celebrate the full being. It's not just like these little snippets of history that we get, from historical books, I guess, traditional historical books, but just doing like deep research, reading her autobiographies, reading anything written on her in that time when she was alive, and trying to convey just how amazing we are.
Weekly contributor Dr. Kili Muhammad gave an update on the COVID pandemic and Delta variant that is surging in America and around the world.
What is the reason the number of infections is rising again?
I think that's an excellent question. The first thing that I will say is that the media continues to push that it's unvaccinated people that are causing the surge. But I think just one simple question can put that to rest, and that is, what did the unvaccinated people have to do with this pandemic starting from the beginning? So that to me is a very worthless statement that a lot of people are making, because viruses are very unpredictable. And as the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said in the criterion, July 4th, 2020, they will not be able to stop this. It has mutations that are happening faster than they can keep up with. And so that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with the reality that the minister has given us a path to look at by his statements that he made July 4th, 2020, and we're watching that reality come into fruition.
Sister Sherry Muhammad, founder and director of Asiatic Minds Online School, and Sister Tiffany X, science instructor, shared more about the Asiatic Minds curriculum and how it will provide knowledge that students need to learn to have a solid foundation in science.
Students enjoy learning, especially when it's delivered well. How will Asiatic Minds promote learning and make it an enjoyable experience for the students?
At Asiatic Minds, one thing I'm really excited about is we are going to have a school theme song. So that will be one of the things that we'll get our morning started with. After our prayer and recitation to the flag, we will open up with the theme song to get the children excited and ready about school. Also, to make education enjoyable, all of our teachers have excellent personalities. So they will bring their passion and personality to the table, which is something that engages students. When you're passionate and you show how much you care and that you're into a subject, that draws the children in, as well as the different online tools, Kahoot quizzes and different things like that will be used to help the children to engage into the subjects and have fun while doing it.
Kamal Bell of Sankofa Farms in North Carolina discussed how the farm is helping close the food availability gap in the community.
Oh, one of the things that I noticed is that there was a video that I saw where you were working to catch the queen. How long did it take for you to do that, and why is that necessary?
So that's a great question. Catching a queen is something that can take maybe 10 seconds, or it can take 10 minutes. So just based on where the bees are congregating, that gives me an idea where their brood chamber is. And brood are bees in their developing stages. So bees have they have 4 stages: they have the egg, larva, pupa, and adult. So the brood chamber is all of those stages of bees on frames that are side by side. And typically in a healthy hive, it'll average around to be 4 or 5 frames, and sometimes 6 or 7, depending on what time of year we're in. So it's important to find the queen because she's laying the eggs, and her job is tasked with reproduction. So if you don't have a queen laying eggs, you don't have a productive colony.
NNV News anchor Willie Muhammad sat down with monthly contributors Brother Lawrence Muhammad and Addie Gavin Richard to discuss Imani Stanton and Jayla Jackson, who recently won Harvard University's debate competition, and their involvement in the Harvard Debate Council Diversity Project.
Do you think these type of programs are effective, or are they just really symbolic and maybe just something that these white universities are doing to say, hey, we're helping underprivileged youth?
It's like what the brother was saying. It's a kind of a two-edged sword. It's a two-way street. I think that, yes, in some ways it does help some of our children for doing certain things and keeping them off of the streets. Not that every black child is on the streets or anything of that nature, because there are kids who are just interested in doing speech and debate. There are kids that are interested in things of that nature. However, I also look at it, yes, this is Harvard University. I have never heard, to my knowledge, Brother Willie, of an HBCU hosting a speech and debate or having a speech and debate club. I don't recall one when I was up at Southern University in Baton Rouge.
Lawrence Muhammad and Gavin Richard shared their thoughts about NFL Hall of Famer and head coach of Jackson State University, Deion Sanders, walking off a media day interview after a reporter failed to put respect on his name.
What are your thoughts about him even becoming the head coach at Jackson State University and the excitement that it has caused?
I would say the tide is turning. So what I mean by that is to have someone of the stature of Deion Sanders to come back to an HBCU or a Black university, to come and to bring that prestige and to bring that clout and to bring that fame with him, that shows a great deal of the potential that we have. So if you notice, a lot of these players, they come from places like these small universities, Black universities, but they don't necessarily get the recognition that they should. And so by Deion Sanders coming back to Jackson State University, he not only brings himself, but he brings the eyes of the world to an HBCU. And so now we get to see the greatness of our people as a whole.
Lawrence Muhammad and Gavin Richard also commentated on the anti-critical race theory bill that passed in the Texas Senate recently.
What are your thoughts that they basically passed this legislation that prevents people from teaching that the KKK, their historic terror, was morally wrong, and even that slavery was morally wrong? That's crazy.
Yeah, where do we start on this one? Look, we talked about fear in the last segment with Coach Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
This is really fear. And I'll explain to you why. I want to give you a quote from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. This is from the New Education Paradigm. He says, at the root of every civilization is a knowledge, inherent in which is an idea that gives energy and direction to that knowledge. But if the idea at the root of that knowledge and civilization is finite, then the world that comes as a result of that knowledge is also finite. It has an end.
On I Have a Testimony, student minister Corey Muhammad spoke with host Willie Muhammad about the influence his parents had in exposing him to Islam, the work Charlotte laborers had in shaping Muhammad Mosque number 36 of North Carolina, and the ongoing work of the local organizing committee, or LOC, which formed during the Million Man March.
What would you say has been the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's greatest impact on your life personally?
Brother, a father figure. Because again, my father, after I was 6, 7 years old, really, there was just some time there due to certain circumstances. There was just a lot of time, many years. And so like a lot of young men that's trying to be husbands right now, men that's trying to be this and trying to be that. A lot of us haven't had an example in front of us, a worthy example in front of us. So one of the ways the minister has impacted me has been like a father figure from afar. On top of all the other ways he's impacted, been like a father figure, because a lot of our Christian brothers and sisters, we had this little saying, the little bracelets everybody had, WWJD, what would Jesus do? And so oftentimes I will find myself, if I'm challenged with something, WWFD, what will Farrakhan do? Because he was and is giving the example on what it really means to be a man, a righteous man, a man of principle. That not just an example to men, really to women as well, but from a male standpoint, that missing figure that a lot of us didn't have and unfortunately don't have in our lives.
NNV News anchor Rosalind Park spoke with weekly contributor Brian E. Muhammad, writer for the Final Call News, about the recent social upheaval in South Africa.
The mayhem, deadly violence, and pillaging that shook South Africa were deliberate. Who does he suspect is orchestrating the upheaval?
Well, President Ramaphosa, he's having political issues. I would say again, the ANC, the ruling party, is having political upheaval within the party itself. His predecessor, President Jacob Zuma, who has been under these corruption charges and was arrested earlier this month. Ramaphosa is implying that people who are supporters of his predecessor, Jacob Zuma, is to blame.
Let us pause for announcements from our sponsors. After the break, Charles Muhammad will be on to give tips from How to Eat to Live on what foods we should be feeding our children. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps us to highlight solutions for a brighter tomorrow. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
Asiatic Minds. Online education. Helping our children to discover their God-given skills, gifts, talents, and passion that will allow them to see their greatness, as well as the greatness of our people. And upon discovering that greatness, infusing them with the desire to use it for the betterment of themselves, their families, our people, and the world. Call now, 502-219-4848.
This is Sister Sajda Muhammad. We are proud to announce that the Sajda House commemorative Elijah coins are finally here. This priceless heirloom, made from recycled copper from the messenger's home, is now available at sajdahouse.com.
The hashtag #BankBlack social media campaign made strides not only in revolutionizing how we bank, but also how we think. The movement inspired thousands of African Americans across the country to transfer or deposit millions of dollars into Black-owned banks. These are banks that will invest in urban communities, employ African Americans, support Black businesses, and inspire Black home ownership. This is a very proud moment for our culture as we are taking small, but significant, steps towards building Black power through Black wealth.
Thank you for tuning in to NNV News. Please share your thoughts with us in the comments section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, National Network View. This is Clifton Muhammad with nnvnews.com.
As we consider the best foods for babies and children, we should understand how vitamins and supplements can promote good health and how processed foods can be detrimental. Joining us to discuss this is weekly contributor Charles Muhammad. Welcome on, Brother Charles. How are you doing today?
I'm fine, man. Thank you for having me.
Of course, it's wonderful to have you. Now, Brother Charles, what advice does How to Eat to Live have for young children and babies?
Yes, ma'am. Well, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Ms. Holt Farrakhan promotes that women, when they have a child, obviously, they breastfeed them. And on page 89 of book 2, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad stresses that by saying that even if a mother is sick, it says, a sick mother's milk is better for her baby than a healthy cow milk or any animal's milk. You may give your babies cow's milk, but if you can breastfeed them yourself as nature intended, then you should do so. Now, there's parts of that phrase I find very interesting because he says if you can breastfeed them yourself, because in this country there's a history of women having babies and having a wet nurse breastfeed the children for them. Because the woman's breast milk, and I'm no expert in this, obviously, women in the Nation of Islam would have more thorough knowledge of it. But from what I've heard, the breast milk is, you could say, coded for that particular child, whether you have twins or triplets, but the milk is coded for that particular baby because that baby has been developing in the mother. And if the mother's sick, then the antibodies for that sickness can override that sickness that the mother has and introduce those antibodies and the proper nutrition into that child. So when a child is born, the child is born with a layer of mucus. It's called vernix, and it looks like a child comes out with a whole bunch of like paste over it. But that paste, that mucus, is a protective layer of mucus to prevent bacteria or any other foreign agents from getting into the child, because the child is vulnerable. And then that is that outer immunity, and the breast milk provides the inner immunity. So the mother is the first nurse, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says, even if you are sick, give that child breast milk.
Wow. And for those who can't, what are the alternatives to breastfeeding?
Well, in the hospital, if a mother is not able to breastfeed their child, they have a large supply of Similac and Enfamil, which are synthetic, and it is not the Milky Way, because milk comes from a mammary gland. All right, that's the definition of milk. You don't make milk by pulverizing other, like beans or nuts or any other type of vegetable and then adding water. That's not a milk. That's a mixture. So for a natural alternative, like the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, that there is the cow's milk. And if you go online or do some research at a bookstore or a library, you see there are a lot of formulas that you can get for goat's milk, which is very healthy for newborns if the mother's not able to breastfeed. I mean, there's a lot of water involved, and then you add the milk, and sometimes there's other ingredients that help that child extract the nutrients. What are important nutrients for children are fats, because the brain is still developing. And so those DHA and ELA fats that are present in breast milk are also found in goat's milk and cow's milk. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad stressed that in the first slide we showed, that cow's milk is an alternative. And we stay away from these laboratory-made mixtures such as Enfamil and Similac.
Wow, Brother Charles, that's very interesting. So, if I'm correct, you're saying that oat milk is not really milk at all. It's just a mixture.
No, oat milk is ground with water added and certain other.
Right.
But I don't think you can squeeze an oat plant and get milk from it.
Right, yes, sir. Now, are baby food products okay for our children?
Well, yes and no. I mean, when we hear the terms all natural, organic, or even whole, that we seem to think that these are things that were made to maintain health, but they're products to be sold to us with names on them. Things that are considered all natural or organic only need a small percentage of actual fruit juice or vegetable extract to say that it is a plant-based or all natural. So we need to be careful, particularly feeding our children who instinctively and intuitively gravitate towards the breast. They come out the womb looking to suckle on the breast. Now, if the breast is not available all the time and you have to go to these foods in a jar, remember, these are foods in a jar, and foods in jars are laced with preservatives. I mean, they have to be, because there's a lot of liability in taking natural foods, putting them in a jar and try to put them on the shelf for 90 to 120 days, and then you take it and open it and thinking that you're feeding living material to a living being. It's not the case. So read the ingredients carefully. It is up to the parent to decide whether they want to give their child or their baby, that is the number one investment in the family, something that can be pulled off the shelf. No, we should also take the time to make homemade, all natural foods. Just, puree it down so that you can spoon feed it to your child.
Absolutely, yes, sir. The ingredients in the foods that we consume and that we feed our children are so very important that we pay attention to. Now, for our next question, should we consider giving our children supplemental vitamins?
I was a Flintstone kid, and I'm a little off, so I wouldn't advise supplements. I mean, but I'm not a doctor. Now, if a doctor examines your child, your baby, your toddler, and says that they don't seem to be getting enough nutrition from what you're feeding them, these are some supplements that you can get. Now, supplements are add-ons. They're not replacements. So when we were younger and we took vitamins, I don't even know if we necessarily needed it, but this is not something that should be common. Supplements should be medicinal, not something that's, on the regular for a child. So we also need to look at who we're dealing with. We're dealing with scientists of death. They try to be scientists of living and bringing life, but even Flintstone vitamins were caught putting aspartame and GMOs in their vitamins. And so that is not a proper substitute of fresh fruits and vegetables or breast milk. But if we're dealing with a toddler and older, giving them vitamins, vitamins are not a good substitute for regular food. Just increase the fruits and vegetables. Have them, instead of eating the candy that they gravitate to, give them some oranges, some apples, some bananas, pears, and we love that, the sweet fruit, we loved it. So, and How to Eat to Live, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad shuns vitamins. He says it's a shame that we rob natural foods of their vitamins and put them into caps. But he says this on page 67 of book 1. You can start them off with orange juice and mashed apples. That's fresh fruit. This is done whenever you think the baby's able, after he is about 3 months old, pardon me. So this is the formula. Natural whole foods. You could go apple picking. You can cut the middleman out and take those apples, chop them up, puree them, and we love applesauce. Applesauce is basically synonymous for baby food, or foods that you feed even the elderly when they can't feed themselves. So yes, let's move away from the synthetic vitamins and stick with the whole foods.
Yes, sir. Now I have one more question for you. So children are bombarded with cereal commercials, but what does How to Eat to Live say about them?
Well, Elijah Muhammad outrightly says that on page 89 of book 2, do not feed your children all sorts of processed cereals. Foods such as cereals. If you can give them fresh foods, do not give your child ready prepared food. So cereals are obviously processed from whatever grain that the cereal's coming from, whether it's corn, oats, or wheat. Cereals are when they break apart those kernels and extract certain components from them. These kernels have multiple parts that when they're together, they're like dynamite. They work great together. When you pull them apart, they do certain things, but they extract away more from the body than they give. Cereals are not good for us, particularly when you walk down a supermarket. There's a whole aisle dedicated to this type of food. You got to wonder why these types of foods that are considered healthy or essential have their own aisle and they're sitting on a shelf. They're not refrigerated. They could stay there for 90 to 120 days, maybe even longer. And you think that's something that's petrified and not living. You pour milk on it or whatever type of milk you want, soy milk, and it also becomes alive. That's not the case. So we need to get away from these processed foods such as cereals and let our children cook, or not let them cook, but you prepare whole foods for them. Toast is good. Just add a little honey on it, jam, stay away from the peanut butter. But let's get back to cooking at home and not pulling things out of a box, a jar, or a bag. Let's stick with the whole foods.
I agree. Yes, sir, Brother Charles. And it never hurts to teach them how to cook. They have to learn sometime. Yes, sir. But it seems as if all processed cereal foods are poison. Is that true?
I would say so. The Honorable Muhammad warned us about eating processed foods. They are quickly converted into fat if you're dealing with obesity. It's a quick boost of sugar, and it saves you time, but these type of products only add to your health ailments than your boosting your ability or your durability or lifespan, longevity. So we're used to Pop-Tarts. That's what I grew up eating. I went to a high school I had to travel an hour and a half to in New York City. So put a Pop-Tart in there in the toaster while you go take a shower, and it's ready for you. Didn't have time to make eggs and back in the day bacon, and toast and sit down, have nice atmosphere. We're in an instant right now, just add water society. And these foods are poison. They give it to you in certain proportions that you eat it, you get a sugar rush, and it's not supposed to harm you that much. But when you eat it on a day-to-day basis, these are foods that contribute to ADHD and all of the other ailments that have our young men and women restless in schools and they can't concentrate and focus. And there's studies that show once you take the sugar and sugary processed foods out of their diet, our children can concentrate better and show more aptitude in classrooms and be less disruptive and more constructive. So yes, these are straight out poison. And the Elijah Muhammad uses the term poison in How to Live a lot. And it's basically something that disrupts a natural function of something else. Whereas your liver wants to do something, but when you have a buildup of poison in the body, the liver has to address the poison, and that's natural function. And that's what a poison does. It disrupts natural order of things. So yes, processed foods are poison.
Wow, yes, sir. Well, thank you so much for sharing and contributing with us. It's always our honor to have you. So thank you so very much, Brother Charles.
Yes, ma'am. The honor is all mine. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And thank you all for joining us today and tuning into National Network View News. Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel, NNV News. This is Nyah Tsai with National Network View News.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.